grill. I should be right there in the line. Cook him. It's depending on how tough he is. How much punishment he can take. I know he's gonna start running and then I gotta cut the ring. Round 6, 7, we ain't gonna start moving all around. I cut the ring off a little bit.
Oh, imagine that. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? Shakur Stevenson is now saying that his opponent, Artem Harutunyan, is gonna run when he gets in the ring with him. Shakur calling somebody else a runner. Wow. That's what I want to break down. Now, listen, I'm gonna start by saying this. You can believe me. You don't have to believe me. I don't really give a I like Shakur, but with every fighter, you know, I judge on a clean slate. I'm fair, I'm firm, and that's what it is. Shakur Stevenson is a good fighter. You know, he has some skills and whatnot. But the clip you heard at the beginning was a BTS behind the scenes from Top Rank. And Shakur Stevenson is arriving or wherever. I don't know where he trained, if he trained in Houston, but he's arriving at home. He has a fight this week. I will say the promotion has been kind of lacking. It doesn't feel like a Shakur Stevenson fight week. Now, I got to talk about Gervonta Davis real quick. A lot of people hate, even when I state the obvious, or to me, what's the obvious about Tank being the face of boxing. A lot of people hate, but it just goes to show you. You had Teofimo Lopez and Bam Rodriguez both fought on the same day, and it didn't seem like huge, right? Bam had a good performance, Teo won, whatever. But Teo and then Shakur, two guys that were on that Four Horsemen's graphic, the new generation Four Horsemen graphic that whoever came up with, they fight back-to-back weeks alongside Keyshawn Davis is on the Shakur Stevenson card. And I just feel like the buzz is kind of down. That's my honest opinion. Versus when Gervonta Davis fights, everybody in boxing and even outside of boxing knows it's a Tank fight week. Look how many people popped out. Sometimes you gotta pop out and show Ninja, certified boogeyman. I'm the one that up the score with him, right? Look how many people actually went out to Vegas, celebrities included, for Gervonta Davis's fight. We'll see what the turnout is for Newark, New Jersey, and Shakur Stevenson. But I gotta talk about the hypocrisy. Shakur Stevenson, it's pretty shocking that he would say that Artem Harutunyan is gonna run, right? And I'm gonna explain why. I've been covering boxing over 10 years, best in the business, and it's not even close. Now, despite Shakur being a good fighter, we all know that Shakur's last performance, he's trying to erase that memory from people's minds. His last performance was riddled, and I do mean riddled, with straight criticism for how he fought Edwin De Los Santos. Shakur Stevenson, it just wasn't a good fight from either guy, but I think Shakur being who he is, the onus is on Shakur because he's the Olympian. He's the guy with more fights. He's the A side in that equation. He was the name. So it's expected of you to kind of push the tempo and get some things done. And you're the skill guy. You're the silver medalist. You're the guy that people have known. People didn't even really know who Edwin De Los Santos was. I'm not saying me, because I definitely know who he was. I really liked the fight with Jose El Rayo Valenzuela, you know, but I had been watching Edwin De Los Santos. But I'm just saying the mass populace, they may have known Shakur, but they weren't really familiar with the opponent. So it's always going to be expected to do a bit more. Now, Shakur Stevenson, I don't think he has taken this criticism all too well. He's kind of made excuses, I want to say, as to why he fought like that. I mean, at one point, he showed a text to his wifey and said, "Oh, I don't feel well." I mean, people, this is boxing, bro. People don't really care I think just in general in professional sports, I remember one of the persons that I look up to is Kobe Bryant, of course. And I've always stated that on my channel. So that's one of my idols. Kobe Bryant, if you study enough of him, it's like the opposite of Shakur Stevenson. And I'm not saying that in terms like trying to diss Shakur Stevenson, but I'm talking about the Mamba mentality. And he's just from a different cloth and a different generation of how he went about things. For example, Kobe Bryant, the question, this was later on in life, you know, when he was already retired, I believe, he did a mastermind or something. And the question to him was, what's the least amount of sleep that you got before a game? And he was like, the least amount of sleep? Well, no sleep. And he's like, no sleep. And he's like, yeah, you know, things come up. My daughter was sick and we had to take care of that. And I had to stay up on daddy duty because my daughter was sick. Natalia was sick or whatnot, yada, yada, yada. So he said he played a NBA game as the A side and, you know, the team captain and whatnot off zero sleep. And he's like, because at the end of the day, your teammates don't care. And then the people who pay tickets in the arena, they don't care that you like, oh, Kobe stayed up all night with his daughter or is having family problems or da 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 da. He said, I played with no sleep. I played with fevers. I played sick. I played injured. That's the Mamba mentality. This new generation, I feel like it's different. It's not the Mamba mentality. Like Shakur Stevenson versus Artem Harutunyan. Again, Shakur tried to prove it to people by putting up a text showing that he didn't feel good. And even post-fight, he was like, oh, I didn't feel that was my best performance. And, you know, I didn't feel so good, blah, blah, blah. Then he said he was one-handed. No excuses. You won the fight. You could have possibly done more, you know, and that's the reality of it. You're not the first fighter that dealt with like circumstance or injury. Gervonta Davis fought a very dangerous Eastside Pitbull Cruz who's wild, and you got to be able to tame him, because if you can't, he might knock you out or get you in trouble. And Tank clearly had one hand in that fight, and despite it all, it was a very good boxing performance by Gervonta Davis. In fact, I think the only reason he probably didn't knock out Pitbull Cruz is because he was one-handed. But nonetheless, that's how the fight played out. Tank made it through, and then Tank back to knocking dudes straight out, right? That's business. And I respect Tank. I learned more about Tank in that fight than some of the knockout fights, because if a guy possesses power, they possess power. That's not anything out of the ordinary. Once you've seen the same person hurt everybody, okay, clearly they have power. But Tank showed me something as a fight fan and a boxing analyst when it comes to the Eastside Pitbull Cruz, because he showed he had more wrinkles to his game, and he can box and be scientific and have a tight defense and still use the hand that's hurting him and get the job done another way. Shakur Stevenson, his approach to being injured in the fight with Edwin De Los Santos was to be really evasive and gallop around the ring and take large chunks of real estate and major steps backwards and keep your arm out to try to, you know, use as an extender and measure and keep Edwin De Los Santos at bay, right? Shakur is now doing interviews where he said that Edwin De Los Santos is top 4. And he's also in the past done interviews saying that Tank Davis, why is he fighting Frank Martin? He should be fighting Edwin De Los Santos. Listen, Shakur, a lot of what he's saying sounds very bad to me. Now, Shakur, he's done well for himself. He's a known name. He may not want to hear this. I don't care. It's a free country. I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm just being real. He really needs to get a PR person and pronto, because the way he's saying things and what he's saying, I don't think is beneficial to the brand, if you will, right? And I've noticed about this young generation particularly, a lot of these guys, especially in boxing, these young fighters, they tend to say whatever, say certain things, then they're met with resistance from the public and met with controversy, or people are barking back at what you said or what you claimed. And then they go on social media or interviews and act like it's the media's fault, or they act like it's the fans' fault, or they act like they're public enemy number one and people don't want to give them a fair shake. And I reject that deposit. I don't think people inherently have a problem with Shakur Stevenson. I think a lot of this is Cheddar Bob. A lot of this is self-inflicted. You saying the craziness and like living on social media and putting these posts is doing more harm than it's doing good. And I think that's why he's chastised in the public and so many people have things to say. For example, your last performance, it is what it is. You can't take it back now. The public watched it. I watched it. It is what it is. It's set in stone. It's like Haney versus Garcia. The fight happened. You could say, oh, Ryan failed a drug test. The fight happened. People watched it. There's no, only thing you could do is start from now. And you can't go back in time. So Shakur got to live with the results. He got to live with the criticism of that particular performance. But where my generation differs from, I think, Shakur Stevenson's generation is, instead of using this negative energy, instead of using this negative chi, this criticism, if you will, and backlash that you've got for your last fight, channel it into something positive through your performance, but don't say anything. I think this new generation, they want to talk about it. Like Shakur Stevenson, he's doing a bit of projection here. He's saying that Artem Harutunyan is going to run. Bro, he fought Frank Martin, who, in my opinion, is a more dangerous lightweight southpaw than Shakur Stevenson in terms of the fisticuffs. Not saying Shakur can't beat you or he can't win in fights. I'm talking sheer like power with the skills. Frank Martin possesses more power. And Frank Martin, you could say he didn't have, I guess, Shakur's experience, but Artem Harutunyan did not approach the Frank Martin fight timid or scary. So who is Shakur to suggest that this guy is gonna run when everybody's screaming, you ran in your last fight? It just sounds like projection here, right? Artem Harutunyan is an Olympian, just like you're an Olympian. And again, his biggest opportunity was Frank Martin, a dangerous puncher at the lightweight division. And I thought he came out in them early rounds. He looked very sharp, very swift. So if anything, Shakur continuing to talk, which I've always said on my channel, especially recently, don't tell us, show us. Don't tweet, oh, I feel sharper. Oh, I'm in the gym. Oh, I'm going to show you guys and I'm going to shut up the critics and me against the world. People don't want to hear that, bro. I'm just being real. And some people like it. Some people don't like it because I'm brash. But I don't know how else to be other than be truthful. And I think the position Shakur is in, he would be better suited to just show us. Don't tell us, show us. Because it's beyond the point. You fought against that African dude, Nakathila. It was pretty much the same thing. So you continue to show us, once you're in there with awkward guys or big punchers and stuff, you revert to using up a lot of real estate. So nothing you can say is going to fix it. The only thing you can do is show us that you're this improved person. And to be honest, I don't like this for Shakur Stevenson because you got to know who you are as a fighter. Shakur is not a big puncher. It is what it is. And he's putting a lot of pressure on himself to look good. Now to the point where he's talking so much to me, he got to get a stoppage. And here's the thing. I'm just going to be real. It's a catch-22. Even if you stop Artem Harutunyan, what does that even mean? Like, that's cool. That closes out your top ranked deal. and whatnot. But nobody picked this fight and said, hey, this is absolutely the next person I want to see Shakur Stevenson fight. So no matter how much you're talking, you're like, oh, this guy's going to run. I want to be here when he lands, and, you know, all this type of stuff. He's going to be running in the later rounds. Saying all this for what? You're saying this for a guy, Artem Harutunyan, that Frank Martin fought and nearly stopped himself in the 12th round. So I don't know. I just feel like situations like this is, you're putting more pressure than is what is needed. And no matter how the fight ends, I don't feel like people are gonna, because they don't really know Artem Harutunyan, and then he's coming off of a loss. So this is not like a person that people said they wanted to see you fight, world beater Gervonta Davis competition. So at the end of the day, you're only, basically what I'm trying to say is, you're only gonna get but so much credit for a guy coming off a loss anyway. So to put all these extras on it and say, oh, he's gonna run and I can't wait to show y'all and I'm so juiced for this fight, and a bunch of talking, is just like overkill to me. And it's the pot calling the kettle black for Shakur Stevenson to be calling anybody else a runner when the people watched your last fight with Edwin De Los Santos and said the same thing about you. And again, in my honest opinion, Shakur is a good fighter, but he's not a big puncher. So you're not really gonna get a bunch of stoppages necessarily. See, and here's the thing, is I noticed sometimes on Top Rank, they got mercy stoppages. Like that Yoshino dude. Shakur was outclassing him and beating him, but that's what I call a mercy stoppage. It's a fight where, not that the person was winning, but the person very well could have went 12 rounds more than likely without suffering any kind of fatal or near fatal injury from Shakur Stevenson, and then they just stopped the fight. That's a mercy stoppage. Like, you're just like, let's just stop this and everybody go home. But it's not the same as like when Tank fought Frank Martin and he got back to his feet. That ain't no mercy stoppage. The man got knocked down with 2 hard shots. So if the ref would have allowed Tank, when he was at full strength and, you know, one of the best finishers in boxing, to wail on Frank Martin some more, that would have been negligence on behalf of the ref, and he could have created some serious problems long term for Frank Martin. But Shakur Stevenson, he don't got no stoppages like that, like especially anybody of note where he's just bullying him. So I'm telling you, this fight might be a lot more difficult, because when I start hearing the fighter, and to me they sound a bit deluded and delusional, it makes it hard for me to trust. And maybe there's a bit of overconfidence, and maybe there's a bit of you underestimating your foe when you're talking like this. You're talking about Artem's gonna run like he ain't an Olympian too, and like he's not a good fighter. And you're setting the bar really high for yourself, and you're not a Tank style finisher. That's why I think a lot of these guys are truly envious of Gervonta Davis. Not him as a person, but just how he's respected in the sport. Everybody's talking about him. He has a big show. He's selling tickets and doing these crazy finishes, has crazy power, then hitting backflips, and everyone's going crazy. And they're trying to hype up their style. You've seen it with Shakur. You've seen it with Devin Haney. Same thing with Devin Haney. He's like, oh, I'm going to knock out Ryan Garcia. Oh, Ryan Garcia, if I knock you out in the first round, are you going to retire? Like, when did Devin Haney become a first round knockout puncher outside of Mexico? Like, what are we talking about, bro? I know for a fact I'm the realest in boxing history when it comes to this sport and breaking down these fights. I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear. And when I hear fighters like Shakur and Devin talking about like knocking guys out, and that just seems like you're off track, because that's not really your bag. Not to say you can't get a knockout, especially a mercy stoppage like we sometimes see on ESPN and Top Rank, but it just fight your fight. And then again, for Shakur to be saying Artem's gonna run and all this type of stuff, you're only putting the pressure on yourself. And now what happens if you don't get a stoppage? What if it goes 12 rounds and you just win a 12 round? Then it's gonna be more excuses, more, oh, I wasn't feeling good. Oh, he was tricky. I didn't know. And then Shakur's probably gonna have to say Artem Harutunyan's top 5 and Tank needs to fight him. You know, it's this stuff is very predictable. So Shakur, hometown hijinks, last fight with Top Rank, which I'll probably make a separate video. You seen what happened to Pacquiao when he had his last fight with Jeff Horn, and that was his last fight with Top Rank. So I'm not really expecting, I'm expecting potential madness in this Shakur Stevenson fight, where it's the type of fight where during the fight, people get on X, formerly known as Twitter, and they're typing like, oh man, like turn this on. Because this fight could be potentially crazy. It could be harder than people think. Because Harutunyan, I'll be real, I was impressed with him in the Frank Martin fight. He got some fancy footwork, and it's not no running stuff, whatever Shakur talking about, but he got some fancy footwork. He lets his punches go. He's a pretty awkward guy. So this could be a good fight. Weird fight for Top Rank to give Shakur, a guy coming off a loss. It's like, I don't really like fights like this for fighters like Shakur Stevenson. Last fight in the contract, you're in there with the guy who's been training in the Top Rank gym, who's awkward and kind of tricky. You're at home and he's coming off a loss. So at best, you blast him out, and then what? People were like, oh, Frank Martin almost did that, but he was coming off a Frank Martin loss. So to me, I think Shakur has more to lose than he does to gain in this particular fight. But for him to call Artem Harutunyan, who he hasn't even been in the ring with yet, say he's gonna run, I find that very laughable.